The Tokugawa government agreed to pay an indemnity for Richardson's death. 18. Shelling of foreign shipping in Shimonoseki and attacks against foreign property led to the bombardment of Shimonoseki by a multinational force in 1864. 19. The CHSH clan also launched the failed coup known as Kuman incident. The Satsuma CHSH alliance was established in 1866 to combine their efforts to overthrow the Tokugawa Bakufu. In early 1867, Emperor Kamiya died of smallpox and was replaced by his son, Crown Prince Matsuhito Meiji. On the 9th of November, 1867, Tokugawa Yoshinobu resigned from his post and authorities to the emperor, agreeing to be the instrument for carrying out imperial orders. 20. Leading to the end of the Tokugawa shogunate. 21. 22. However, while Yoshinobu's assignation had created a nominal void at the highest level of government, his apparatus of state continued to exist. Moreover, the shogunal government, the Tokugawa family in particular, remained a prominent force in the evolving political order and retained many executive powers. 23. A prospect hardliners from Satsuma and CHSH found intolerable. 24. On the 3rd of January, 1868, Satsuma CHSH forces seized the imperial palace in Kyoto, and the following day had the 15-year-old Emperor Meiji declare his own restoration to full power. Although the majority of Imperial Consultative Assembly was happy with the formal declaration of direct rule by the court and tended to support a continued collaboration with the Tokugawa, Sig Takamori, leader of the Satsuma clan, threatened the assembly into abolishing the title shogun and ordered the confiscation of Yoshinobu's lands. L. On the 17th of January, 1868, Yoshinobu declared that he would not be bound by the proclamation of the restoration and called on the court to rescind it. 26. On the 24th of January, Yoshinobu decided to prepare an attack on Kyoto, occupied by Satsuma and CHSH forces. This decision was prompted by his learning of a series of arson attacks in Edo, starting with the burning of the outworks of Edo Castle, the main Tokugawa incidents. Boshin War. The Boshin War, Boshin Sen's, was fought between January 1868 and May 1869. The alliance of samurai from southern and western domains and court officials had now secured the cooperation of Crown Emperor Meiji, who ordered the dissolution of the 200-year-old Tokugawa shogunate. Tokugawa Yoshinobu launched a military campaign to seize the emperor's court in Kyoto. However, the tide rapidly turned in favor of the smaller but relatively modernized imperial faction and resulted in defections of many daimyos to the imperial side. The Battle of Toba Fushimi was a decisive victory in which a combined army from CHSH, Tosa, and Satsuma domains defeated the Tokugawa army. 27. A series of battles were then fought in pursuit of supporters of the shogunate. Edo surrendered to the imperial forces and afterward, Yoshinobu personally surrendered. Yoshinobu was stripped of all his power by Emperor Meiji and most of Japan accepted the emperor's rule. The naval battle of Hakodate, May 1869, in the foreground. Kasuga and Ktetsu of the Imperial Japanese Navy pro-Tokugawa remnants retreated to northern Hunch, Utsurup and Mie, and later to Izo, present-day Hokkaido, where they established the breakaway Republic of Izo. An expeditionary force was dispatched by the new government and the Izo Republic forces were overwhelmed. The siege of Hakodate came to an end in May 1869 and the remaining forces surrendered. 27. Meiji Era, 1868-1912. The charter oath was made public at the enthronement of Emperor Meiji of Japan on the 7th of April, 1868. The oath outlined the main aims and the course of action to be followed during Emperor Meiji's reign, setting the legal stage for Japan's modernization. 28. The Meiji leaders also aimed to boost morale and win financial support for the new government. Prominent members of the Iwakura mission. Left to right. Kido Takeyoshi, Yamaguchi Majuka Iwakura Tomomi, It Hirobumi Kubo Toshimichi. Japan dispatched the Iwakura mission in 1871. The mission traveled the world in order to renegotiate the unequal treaties with United States and European countries that Japan had been forced into during the Tokugawa shogunate, and to gather information on Western social and economic systems, in order to effect the modernization of Japan. Renegotiation of the unequal treaties was universally unsuccessful, but close observation of the American and European systems inspired members on their return to bring about modernization initiatives in Japan. Japan made a territorial delimitation treaty with Russia in 1875, gaining all the Kuril Islands in exchange for Sakhalin Island. 29. The Japanese government sent observers to Western countries to observe and learn their practices, and also paid foreign advisors in a variety of fields to come to Japan to educate the populace. For instance, the judicial system and constitution were modeled after Prussia, described by Naga as an attempt to control popular thought with a blend of Confucianism and German conservatism. 30. The government also outlawed customs linked to Japan's feudal past, such as publicly displaying and wearing katana and the top knot, both of which were characteristic of the samurai class, which was abolished together with the caste system. This would later bring the Meiji government into conflict with the samurai. Several writers, under the constant threat of assassination from their political foes, were influential in winning Japanese support for westernization. One such writer was Fukuzawa Yukichi, whose works included Conditions in the West Leaving Asia, and an outline of a theory of civilization which detailed Western society and his own philosophies. In the Meiji Restoration period, military and economic power was emphasized. Military strength became the means for national development and stability. Imperial Japan became the only non-Western world power and a major force in East Asia in about 25 years as a result of industrialization and economic development. Emperor Meiji, the 122nd Emperor of Japan, as writer Albrecht First von Urach comments in his booklet The Secret of Japan's Strength, published in 1942. During the Axis powers period, the rise of Japan to a world power during the past 80 years is the greatest miracle in world history. The mighty empires of antiquity, the major political institutions of the Middle Ages and the early modern era, the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, all needed centuries to achieve their full strength. Japan's rise has been meteoric. After only 80 years, it is one of the few great powers that determine the fate of the world. 31. Transposition in social order and cultural destruction. In the 1860s, Japan began to experience great social turmoil and rapid modernization. The feudal caste system in Japan formally ended in 1869 with the Meiji Restoration. In 1871, the newly formed Meiji government issued a decree called Senmin Heishiya, edict abolishing ignoble classes, giving Burakumin equal legal status. It is currently better known as Kyrie, Emancipation Edict. However, the elimination of their economic monopolies over certain occupations actually led to a decline in their general living standards, while social discrimination simply continued. For example, the ban on the consumption of meat from livestock was lifted in 1871, and many former Burakumin moved on to work in abattoirs and as butchers. However, slow-changing social attitudes, especially in the countryside, meant that abattoirs and workers were met with hostility from local residents. Continued ostracism as well as the decline in living standards led to former Burakumin communities turning into slum areas. In the blood tax riots, The Japanese Meiji government brutally put down revolts by Japanese samurai, angry that the traditional untouchable status of Buryakumin was legally revoked. The social tension continued to grow during the Meiji period, affecting religious practices and institutions. Conversion from traditional faith was no longer legally forbidden. Officials lifted the 250-year ban on Christianity, and missionaries of established Christian churches re-entered Japan. The traditional syncretism between Shinto and Buddhism ended. Losing the protection of the Japanese government which Buddhism had enjoyed for centuries, Buddhist monks faced radical difficulties in sustaining their institutions, but their activities also became less restrained by governmental policies and restrictions. A social conflicts emerged in this last decade of the Edo period. Some new religious movements appeared which were directly influenced by shamanism and Shinto. Emperor Ojimaki issued edicts to ban Catholicism in 1565 and 1568, but to little effect. Beginning in 1587 with Imperial Regent Toyotomi Hideyoshi's ban on Jesuit missionaries, Christianity was repressed as a threat to national unity. Under Hideyoshi and the succeeding Tokugawa shogunate, Catholic Christianity was repressed and adherents were persecuted. After the Tokugawa shogunate banned Christianity in 1620, it ceased to exist publicly. Many Catholics went underground, becoming hidden Christians, Kakyopirishitan, while others lost their lives. After Japan was opened to foreign powers in 1853, many Christian clergymen were sent from Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox churches, though proselytism was still banned. Only after the Meiji Restoration was Christianity re-established in Japan. Freedom of religion was introduced in 1871, giving all Christian communities the right to legal existence and preaching. Eastern Orthodoxy was brought to Japan in the 19th century by Saint Nicholas, baptized as Ivan Dmitrievich Kasatky, 32, who was sent in 1861 by the Russian Orthodox Church to Hakodate, Hokkaido as priest to a chapel of the Russian consulate. 33. Saint Nicholas of Japan made his own translation of the New Testament and some other religious books, Mentum Triodium, Pentecostarian feast services, Book of Psalms Ermologion, into Japanese. 34. Nicholas has since been canonized as a saint by the Patriarchate of Moscow in 1970, and is now recognized as Saint Nicholas, equal to the Apostles to Japan. His commemoration day is February 16. Andronik Nikolsky, appointed the first bishop of Kyoto and later martyred as the Archbishop of Perm during the Russian Revolution, was also canonized by the Russian Orthodox Church as a saint and martyr in the year 2000. Euro Church, Nikosaki Devi Bethune McCarty was the first ordained Presbyterian minister missionary to visit Japan, in 1861-1862. His gospel tract translated into Japanese was among the first Protestant literature in Japan. In 1865 McCarty moved back to Ningbo, China, but others have followed in his footsteps. There was a burst of growth of Christianity in the late 19th century when Japan reopened its doors to the West. Protestant church growth slowed dramatically in the early 20th century under the influence of military government during the Showa period. Under the Meiji Restoration, the practices of the samurai classes, deemed feudal and unsuitable for modern times following the end of Sakoku in 1853, resulted in a number of edicts intended to modernize the appearance of upper-class Japanese men. With the Danpatsuya Edict of 1871 issued by Emperor Meiji during the early Meiji era, men of the samurai classes were forced to cut their hair short, effectively abandoning the kanmiji hairstyle. 35. 149 During the early 20th century, the government was suspicious towards a number of unauthorized religious movements and periodically made attempts to suppress them. Government suppression was especially severe from the 1930s until the early 1940s, when the growth of Japanese nationalism and state Shinto were closely linked. Under the Meiji regime, lèse majesté prohibited insults against the emperor and his imperial house, and also against some major Shinto shrines which were believed to be tied strongly to the emperor. The government strengthened its control over religious institutions that were considered to undermine state